I love video games. I also love Harry Potter. No, seriously, I love Harry Potter. I've spent the better part of my life completely obsessed with it. My 18th birthday present was to go to LeakyCon 2009, and my 21st birthday present was to go to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in Orlando. I'm an only child, so I spent a lot of time playing story-driven single-player games. Even when the Harry Potter games were just licensed titles that corresponded to the movie releases, they were still really fun and entertaining for a fan like myself. Sometimes. You see, Electronic Arts dropped the ball with later games, culminating in one so disastrously bad that I refused point blank to even play the final game, which sucks, because the Battle of Hogwarts and Deathly Hallows should be a dream for a Harry Potter fan to play. But I'm getting ahead of myself. As a video game fan and as a Harry Potter fan, I've wanted to make a video about the evolution of the Harry Potter games for a long time. I have some definite opinions about what a Harry Potter game should have, and what each of the games did well and what they didn't. Those opinions are informed by a loose set of guidelines I hold as a fan, and a loose set of guidelines I hold as a gamer. As a fan, I look at how the game handles the story and the characters, and what I would like to see included, such as events or details from the books. As a gamer, I look at the overall design, the graphics and the visual style, and the gameplay and controls. Disclaimer: this is not an exhaustive look at every iteration of every title in the Harry Potter game franchise, since I haven't played all of them. For the most part, I've limited my discussion to the games I've played through to the end. Because I don't care what they changed it to in the American version. It's not the Sorcerer's Stone, it's the Philosopher's Stone. Changing it to Sorcerer's Stone was stupid, and I refuse to acknowledge that stupid decision that the publishers made.
I am Madam Hooch, your teacher.
In the early days of the Harry Potter series, each platform had a completely different game. Philosopher's Stone was released for Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and PC. The Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games were two completely different games. The former had a turn-based combat style similar to Final Fantasy and Pokemon, while the latter was a traditional handheld game with combat and puzzle elements. There were some similarities between the PlayStation 1 and the PC versions, mostly in the dialogue.
Well, well, Potter, we meet again. Having a tour of the castle, are we? This is as far as you'll be going. You won't get past me, no matter how hard you try. Well, well, Potter, we meet again. Having a tour of the castle, are we? This is as far as you'll be going. You won't get past me, no matter how hard you try.
The only version I played any significant portion of is the PC game, so that's the version I'm going to focus on here. It's still one of my favorite games to play for the nostalgia factor alone. When I was 10, back when the game came out, I played it for hours and hours over and over again, to the point that the theme for the game is almost as iconic for me as Hedwig's theme. Considering the year it was made and what licensed movie games tend to be, it really wasn't that bad. It understood the importance of using Hogwarts as an environment for exploration, even within a linear narrative. It was challenging at times, but never so difficult that it became frustrating thanks to the intuitive control scheme.
I know what this is. It's the Devil's Snare. Next time I'm going to pay more attention in herbology.
The overall setup of the game is great. You learn new spells in class, then practice the spells in a challenge level with various aspects, notably platforming and combat. There are also stealth missions where you have to make your way up to and then back down from the astronomy tower to hand Norbert the dragon off to Charlie Weasley. These used to give me so much anxiety when I played the game in my childhood because I hated, and still hate, stealth missions. There's a very good reason I've never played Metal Gear Solid. Whenever I bring the games up with other people, this is the one game in the series they remember, always fondly. I want to make it clear this isn't just nostalgia that's responsible for that fondness. The game itself is really good, and it's still something I could pick up today and still love. For the second game, EA more or less followed the same formula that they did for Philosopher's Stone by releasing multiple different versions for different platforms. I actually didn't care much for the PS2 game, so I never got more than 10% into it. Probably because a good portion of it was stealth-based, which makes no sense because Harry has a goddamn invisibility cloak. At least the stealth sections in Philosopher's Stone made some sense, because you had to take off the cloak to cast spells, and that required a certain level of strategy to avoid filch. But let's talk about the version I played, the one for the PC. It's basically just a continuation of the first game, with the same graphics, structure, and gameplay. There are slight changes though, and these changes make it even better than Philosopher's Stone.
You two should hear about the bean trading system we've set up.
It's based on Bertie Bott's every flavour beans.
Fred, myself, and several of our associates have set up trading opportunities throughout Hogwarts.
Some of us will occasionally have an item to trade. If you have enough beans, we'll trade with you.
One more new addition is the Dueling Club, which of course does show up in the book. But whereas in the book and in the movie, the club is never mentioned again after the first time, it's a fun mini-game here, where you duel various students and rise through the ranks to become the school dueling champion. All the positive things I have to say about Philosopher's Stone are also applicable to Chamber of Secrets, but the small additions that I've mentioned about this second game make it superior, and one of the best games in the entire Harry Potter franchise.
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
I'd say Prisoner of Azkaban is without a doubt the best of the Harry Potter movie games, hands down. It ditches the structure of the first two games, but for the better, because it gets just about everything right for a Harry Potter game. For the first time, you get to play not just as Harry, but as Ron and Hermione, and you can switch between characters at will. The game gives you reasons to switch between them, since each of them has their own unique abilities and spells. This enhances the challenges in the game, since in order to progress you sometimes need a spell that only one of the trio knows. It's all part of the puzzle element that's a prominent aspect of the game. Harry's the only one who can jump across chasms, and he's the only one who can cast Carpe Retractum and Expecto Patronum. Ron can open secret passageways and search shelves for items. He's also the only one who can cast Lumos Duo to defend against Hinky Punks, and he's the only one who can use stink bombs or stink pellets. Hermione naturally has the largest spell arsenal. She's the only one who can cast Glacius, Reparo, or Draconiphores. She's also the only one who can fit under or through small spaces. And only Harry and Hermione can ride Buckbeak the Hippogriff.
It's okay. I'm alright.
A good portion of the game is puzzle-based, but it's never too frustrating.
Another puzzle? Oh, great.
At least not for the player. You switch between the trio when necessary to complete spell challenges, locate potions ingredients, and dodge security. Now I know stealth was something I hate, and that it doesn't make a lot of sense when Harry has his cloak. In this game, though, the stealth works. Most of the time, security is comprised of suits of armor with constantly moving lines of vision, so avoiding it is all about timing your movement, not about avoiding NPCs like in Chamber of Secrets. Near the end of the game, after Sirius tries to get into Gryffindor Tower, security trolls are stationed outside the 7th floor corridor, requiring the use of stink pellets as a distraction. It works though, because it just feels like a puzzle, not like a traditional stealth mission. But maybe that's just me making excuses. All I know is I don't mind the stealth here since it's well crafted and well integrated into the gameplay.
Hermione?
Spells and abilities, like throwing stink bombs or drinking health potions, are customizable at will. You program them to specific buttons. This brings up the single issue I could have with the game, the constant need to remap spells. Since you can only use a limited number of spells or abilities at one time, because of the limited number of buttons on the controller, you have to remap the controls on a constant basis. On the one hand, this is good because you can change the controls to suit you, but if you want to use a spell or ability that isn't currently mapped, you have to pause the game, change out the spells on the controller, and then unpause. But it's not a big issue. It's not something that breaks the immersion or takes a long time. and it never bothered me when I played the game. The worst Harry Potter games are the ones that are too linear. There's nothing wrong with a linear game, or even a linear Harry Potter game, but there needs to be some degree of freedom to explore or at least walk around Hogwarts. Goblet of Fire, to put it simply, is an awful wasted opportunity of a game. EA discarded literally everything they'd put into the previous 3 games and decided to start from scratch, with an entirely new game structure that did away with exploration of Hogwarts completely. I'm not kidding. At no point in the game do you go to the common room, the Great Hall, the Quidditch pitch, nothing. The game is entirely level-based. You play a certain stage until you reach a goal, and then you're immediately sent back to the stage selection screen. This means you have no chance to explore environments with any real depth. You can't collect extras or interact with any characters. I'm serious. Harry, Ron, and Hermione are just about the only characters in the game. And if there are others, you don't interact with them except for briefly in cutscenes.
Harry!
It gets worse. In order to unlock further stages, you need to collect a certain number of Triwizard Shields. So to advance to the next stage of the game, you need to replay the same levels to find them.
Back again, eh? And there are still several shields to collect.
Once you find a shield, you're instantly transported back to the level selection screen, and you're required to play that level from the very beginning. This is nothing more than a lazy way to artificially inflate the length of the game. Instead of creating more areas to explore, they just force you to play the same levels over and over again.
The gillyweed!
Right, yeah!
This might be okay, if not for the fact that the levels themselves aren't interesting or really very much fun. The design of the game is ugly, and there's always too much going on the screen at once. The Triwizard Shields themselves are just very lazy addition with no narrative equivalent. They're merely tokens that take you to the next stage. This ties into the major problem with the game, that the gameplay doesn't feel tailored to the Harry Potter universe. This is an issue on 2 fronts. First, the narrative. It's almost incidental, and it's only related to the player through very brief cutscenes. You'd barely know what's going on if you haven't read the book or seen the movie. Here's an example of what I'm talking about.
Potter, I realise I never thanked you for tipping me off about the dragons. The prefect's bathroom's not a bad place for a bath. Passwords...
Pine fresh.
You can see how the game only touches on the fact that events happen, and that it never goes even superficially into the story at all. So the gameplay isn't tied to the narrative or to the Harry Potter universe at large. That's bad enough. But it could be forgivable if the game we got was still a fun experience. But that's not the case here. The biggest issue is that there's no differentiation of spells. In the last 3 games, you learned spells over the course of playing them, and then used them to open up new areas of the castle to explore. In Goblet of Fire, there's no inventory of spells you choose from. Instead, the X and the square button automatically turn into whatever spell you need at a given moment. This wouldn't be too much of a problem if the game wasn't also mostly duel-based. In previous games, there was a healthy balance of fighting and puzzle solving, but here there's virtually no skill required. You smash the same 2 buttons over and over again to defeat bland enemies from the very first level to the very last level. There is some strategy involved, but it's repetitive instead of engaging. There's only some variety in what you do from level to level. The levels with more variety are the only ones that are close to memorable. For example, the fight against Voldemort and the first Triwizard task. Those 2 levels are actually pretty fun to play. But I'd say they're the only parts of the game really worth playing over again. Like in Prisoner of Azkaban, you can play as Harry, Ron, or Hermione. But instead of giving them unique abilities that distinguish them, EA gave us a really awful multiplayer game. All 3 of them have the same abilities, so if you're playing alone, the only reason to pick one character over the other is personal preference. The problem with making the game multiplayer is that narratively, Goblet of Fire has a lot of sections that are Harry only by necessity. You can't justify bringing Ron or Hermione into one of the Triwizard tasks. That means that the 3 tasks and the duel with Voldemort at the end are all single-player only levels. That begs the question, why did they make this game multiplayer? There's only one portion of the game that caters to the multiplayer, and that's the use of combined casting to complete certain actions, like lifting a very large boulder out of the way. There's a lot wrong with this game, but the worst aspect is something I touched on earlier, the game's complete disinterest in the narrative. The entire plot of Goblet of Fire, the Triwizard Tournament's entire existence, is employed to set up Voldemort's return to power, which drives the events of the rest of the series. For the game to just not focus on this, but to discard any focus on narrative at all, is ridiculous. I don't want to play a generic fantasy game, I want to play Harry Potter. Most of the levels have nothing to do with Harry's wizarding world. The lack of those details is a big reason why the game is so bland and unenjoyable. I truly feel that if EA had been concerned with making the gameplay and narrative cohesive, we would have had not just a better Harry Potter game, but a better game overall, instead of this generic at best fantasy game with Harry tacked on at the end. The care that EA put into the first 3 Harry Potter games is completely absent here.
Accio! Stun him!
After Goblet of Fire, anything EA came up with for Order of the Phoenix was going to be better. And it was, though it was still a disappointment. It came out in 2007, right around the time the Wii was a cultural phenomenon and still incredibly difficult to get your hands on. I was excited because I'd finally be able to use the controller like a wand. I thought it'd be the most immersive Harry Potter game to date. The trailer for the game sets up these expectations. The focus is clearly on the fact that for the first time, all of the castle is open to explore. Look, it's Hogwarts as it exists in the films. The idea is that the geography of the castle is now established in the games, and that you, the player, can finally experience Hogwarts.
My name's Zachariah Smith, and I'm a total wart.
Spellcasting is, as I said, based on your wand movement. Each spell has a different corresponding motion for the Wii mode, or if you're playing on a console other than the Wii, the analog stick. This is a good addition that's been long overdue in the series. This overall approach is great and closer to what a Harry Potter game should be. You gain experience points and level up over the course of the game by unlocking secrets throughout the castle. The more spells you learn, the more secrets and new areas you can unlock and explore. And the Marauder's map, naturally, is there to help you navigate Hogwarts. To find a location or character, all you do is locate them on the map, and a set of footprints show up to show you where to go in-game.
Professor, please! What's happening to me?
You wished to see me, Headmaster?
There are 2 Hogwarts sections of the game. The first part is all about gathering members of Dumbledore's army, completing any mini-quests required to get them to join, and then teaching them spells in the Room of Requirement. Some of the mini-quests are more involved than others, and some are really, really annoying. I can't tell you how long it took to get this stupid bag of meat up this stupid hill. The second Hogwarts section is all about causing a ruckus for Umbridge after she takes over as headmistress. This means creating swamps in the courtyards, delivering howlers to the Inquisitorial Squad, and flying through Hogwarts on a broom as Fred and George, setting off fireworks. So that's the good stuff about the game. Let's talk a little bit about the bad. To start with, the graphics are atrocious. I know the game is 11 years old now, but believe me, they were bad back then too. I remember starting the game up for the first time and being shocked by how bad everything looked. And just look how characters are arranged in relation to one another in cutscenes or during dialogue.
Enough! Your lessons are at an end. Get out!
The worst thing about the graphics is how character models don't really look like the people they're supposed to be based on. Harry doesn't look like Harry. Ron doesn't look like Ron. They look awful. Thankfully, since the game isn't stage-based, the narrative is more present in the game proper, but it's still shown in strokes too broad for my liking.
Almost there, Harry. Courtroom 10, a full Wizengamot, and for a simple case of underage magic.
Order! Order! All those in favor of conviction!
We also wish to welcome our new defense against the dark arts teacher, Professor Dolores Umbridge, who...
Thank you, Headmaster. The Minister for Magic has always considered education to be of vital importance. Although progress for progress' sake must be discouraged.
She's a friend of Fudge's. She was there.
I'm still illuminating.
It's a load of waffle.
There's important stuff in this waffle.
Thank you, Professor Umbridge, and to you and all newcomers. Welcome to Hogwarts.
Order of the Phoenix has one of the best plots of the 7 books. It would have been nice to see more care put into telling the story here. EA was on the right track with the changes they made with this game, but they didn't go nearly far enough or put enough care in to make the game great like it should be. I've still played it through 6 times though, even with my complaints.
Well, honestly, it would only take you 2 seconds to straighten up afterwards.
Half-Blood Prince is, for all intents and purposes, Order of the Phoenix but less. It continues with the exact same structure as the last game, but it's much shorter. It's plausible to beat the entire thing in a single sitting. The same problems that plagued Order of the Phoenix are also present here, such as the bad graphics and the minimal focus on the story, but they include even fewer side quests here. Easily the best part of this game is the potion brewing minigame that ties in with the Half-Blood Prince subplot, but that's really the only addition made to the game that I can call a positive. For some inexplicable reason, they did away with the Marauders map and instead have you call on nearly headless Nick to lead you to your desired destination. This is pretty annoying since A, in Order of the Phoenix, the map gave you footprints to follow, which would have been easier to do than to get an actor into the studio to record dialogue, and to then animate the ghost. And B, it gets really annoying to hear Nick talk constantly.
There's another of those crests.
The idea presented in the game is that Nick is needed to help navigate the new security arrangements.
I don't know how to get there with half the castle locked by the auras.
I'd ask nearly headless Nick. He can still get around, so he knows all the shortcuts.
But newsflash, the Marauders map does that just fine. That's what it was made for.
Superfine!
Protego!
The attempt to imbibe the game with humor was bad. Laughably bad. Really, if they wanted humor, they should have just included stuff from the books, instead of including slapstick, often non-diegetic features.
Oh, sorry, Harry. I've arranged to go with Dee.
It feels forced and silly instead of organic and engaging, and it leads to some tonally awkward moments, especially when mixed with the graphics. Yeah, the graphics are still really bad.
No, Harry! It's a trap!
Get away from her!
The worst part about this game really is that there's a lot less to do here than in the Order of the Phoenix. You're no longer unlocking secrets in the castle with the various spells you learn. You just run around Hogwarts waving your wand to unleash mini crests that level you up. I understand that Half-Blood Prince has a bit less happening narratively than Order of the Phoenix, but that doesn't mean every aspect of the game had to be stripped back. If anything, that gives you an opportunity to lengthen the game by adding more world-building elements and mini-quests. That's the biggest problem with the game, the small scope of it. I'll use Quidditch as an example. Quidditch is something that games always struggle to make fun and engaging. With this game, there's literally no challenge to it. All you do is fly through rings, smack opponents that fly next to you, and then you eventually catch the snitch. There's no challenge to locate it. The rings navigate you right to the snitch. You fly on an automated path, more or less, so it's nearly impossible to not end up catching the snitch. And since you played Quidditch 5 times over the course of the game, they should have tried to make it fun instead of tedious. Honestly, Half-Blood Prince is only replayable if you're a Harry Potter fan like me who loves the series and the characters. I really can't see it being interesting a second time around for a casual fan.
Yes, I'm the Half-Blood Prince.
By 2010, it was clear to me that EA was putting less care into creating an engaging Harry Potter experience with the main series releases. But I was interested to see what they would come up with for Deathly Hallows, since it's the one book that mostly takes place outside of Hogwarts. This presents a challenge for the developers, certainly, but it also presents an opportunity for world building. I really wasn't sure what to expect from Deathly Hallows Part 1, since the earlier section of the book was centered on what fans call the boring Harry Potter and Co. go camping parts. Still, I bought a copy of the game upon release because, I reasoned, no matter how bad the game was, I would still play it over and over again. I remember playing Goblet of Fire, then the worst game in the series, multiple times. Surely, I thought, that would be the worst case scenario for Deathly Hallows. Oh boy, was I wrong. I was so wrong. You'll notice immediately that the graphics here are much better than in the last 2 games. But this is the only improvement made for this game. Everything else is worse. Much worse. Since I mentioned graphics, I'll start there. Yes, the characters look a lot better, but that doesn't mean the visuals of the game are necessarily nice to look at. The lighting is weird, like there's a constant fog over everything, and everything's very overexposed. Look at this portion from the Ministry of Magic, for example, with this ugly blue fog.
Hermione, be quiet. Be quiet.
Now, when I say Harry Potter, what kind of gaming experience do you envision? Whatever it is, I guarantee you it's not cover-based shooter. But for some reason, that's what EA went with here. Just why? Why? I guess I can kind of see what EA was thinking. Dueling was always present in some form or another in the series, increasingly so as time went on. Without Hogwarts as an environment for exploration, the developers probably decided to focus on dueling and stealth instead of a semi-open world, since the former could be done in any number of locations. But magic isn't all about dueling. Defense, remember, is only one of the many courses taught at Hogwarts. The emphasis on offensive and defensive magic, rather than on others that can be used in combination on puzzles or challenges, like in earlier games, limits the scope of what the player can do, and therefore limits the variety and replayability of this game. It's clearly a decision made by a company seeking to copy features of popular games like Call of Duty, to push out a licensed game quickly without considering or caring about whether it would make for a good game or not. You'd imagine that since the focus is on dueling, that they try to give some diversity to the effects and impacts of spells, but no. Every spell does basically the same thing, turning the entire game into a button masher for at least 90% of it. Almost everything you do is fight with no consideration for strategy. Strategy is an element that's completely gone from this game, so the least EA could have done was put some effort into the dueling, but they didn't. The level design doesn't creatively use the setup of locations or key points on a map to stage combat. Considering that it's supposed to be a cover-based shooter, there's an awful lot of dueling in open spaces, which all but eliminates the strategy required of a cover-based shooter by nature. And when cover is present, it never feels like an organic part of the world. Why are there random ministry crates in the middle of a hallway here blocking the path? Compare this to a game like Mass Effect. You take cover and fight enemies using weapons and biotics. You have a variety of choices in how you take down enemies, even if you play as a soldier when you only use guns, because then you have multiple weapons that have different types of ammo. Here there's really no difference between the spells you use. Enemies show up out of nowhere, not as strategic points, so you don't develop a strategy, you just throw out spells and hope that beats them. This would be bad enough, but this is basically all you do for the entirety of the game. There's almost nothing else to do. There's the main story where you duel enemies, or hide under the invisibility cloak and then duel, and then there are times where Ron and Hermione go off to do tasks like reconnaissance to prepare for the infiltration of the Ministry, leaving Harry to do tasks on his own. This could have been a great addition to the game, where Harry could explore the wizarding world, he could collect optional items and learn optional spells to use later in the main story to enhance the experience. Instead, these encounters, as they're called, involve Harry doing the same things he does in the main story, just without Ron and Hermione there. For example, you rescue Muggleborns from Snatchers, or you rescue Muggleborns from dragons, or you rescue Muggleborns from the Ministry. For a story that at this point in the series is clearly about resisting a fascist government, the gameplay options you have are frustratingly limited. The main issue is that the game is just too linear. It could have been so much better if you were given options and allowed to explore or choose your own approach to a situation. To navigate, you cast the 4-point spell to take you where you need to go. A better approach would have been to make each portion more open world, to allow you to explore an area, collect items, collect intel, to decide on your own approach to dealing with the issue at hand. Instead, you follow 4 points and wave your wand frantically at everything you come into contact with. This means you really aren't given a reason to leave the path and look for collectibles. The ones that are present, like editions of the Quibbler or the Daily Prophet that tell you what's going on, just seem to be there because EA knows that added items are a thing that games do. So much of this game makes very little sense. Why are you fighting openly in Godric's Hollow? Why are there so many wizards blatantly out and about in a Muggle village? Plot and gameplay are not cohesive. That's the #1 issue at hand here, which, you may recall, was the major drawback of the Goblet of Fire game. One stage is all about getting to the Lovegoods house. Number 1. Why the hell did they apparate 10 miles away? Why didn't they directly apparate to the front door like normal wizards? Number 2. Why would you make that a section of the game instead of something that actually happened in the story? The story's too briefly, touched on in cutscenes, while the game itself is mostly just fighting Snatchers and Death Eaters. I can't even begin to describe how abysmal my experience with this game was. My singular goal while playing it very quickly became to finish it as soon as humanly possible so I never have to play it again. I actually almost didn't finish it. During the destruction of the Locket Horcrux portion, I remember becoming so frustrated I screamed at my screen for at least an hour, played the same section over and over, and nearly returned the game to the store right there without finishing it. I'm not sure who this game was supposed to appeal to. Gamers? Unless they're Harry Potter fans, they're not shelling out $50 for a cover-based shooter when there's so many other ones out there that do a much better job. Harry Potter fans? I don't know any fan who loves the series for its focus on combat. It's all about experiencing the wizarding world and interacting with a plethora of beloved characters. In this game, you hardly ever interact with anyone other than Ron, Hermione, or the interchangeable NPCs. In the end, I don't think it was supposed to appeal to anyone. EA knew a certain number of Harry Potter fans would buy the game, and that even if the game was awful, they couldn't do anything about it because they'd already bought the game and given EA their money. The worst thing about this game is that because of it, I didn't even play the last one. The penultimate Harry Potter movie game with the Battle of Hogwarts front and center. And I missed it because I knew it would be a piece of shit. EA literally screwed over Harry Potter fans by not delivering the immersive experience the series deserved to be. Deathly Hallows is easily the worst game I have ever played, and I continue to hold a grudge against EA to this day because of it. The main reason the decline of the Harry Potter games has been a sticking point for me for so many years is that the wizarding world presents a great opportunity for creative gameplay, story, and design. The games had the opportunity to add scenes and details from the books that never made it into the movies. EA could have fleshed out characters who were only briefly seen, like Bill Weasley or Nymphadora Tonks. They could have made Hogwarts huge, filled with a million little secrets, you know, like it is in canon. Harry Potter is fertile ground for a legitimately great video game that hardcore gamers, not just fans, would eat right up. We gamers live for that open world shit. Completionists would have a ball at Hogwarts. The games don't have to be limited to Harry's story specifically. Outside of the movie tie-ins, you can make a BioWare-style RPG with a new protagonist in the same universe, referencing events of the wizarding world and having you interact with the characters you know from the books. Hell, you could make a game dedicated solely to attending magic classes and training for your OWLs, and I, as well as numerous other Harry Potter fans, would line up to buy it. Every game should be made with this key question in mind. Who is this game being made for? There are so many varieties of video games, and the experience varies from genre to genre, to the point that a good game may not necessarily be a fun one for every type of gamer. Like I said before, I don't like stealth-based games, which is why I've avoided playing Metal Gear Solid. By all accounts, it's an influential, well-made game, but based on what I enjoy in a game, it wouldn't be a lot of fun for me personally. On the other hand, I do like first-person shooters, but hop online and you'll find a multitude of people who hate on franchises like Call of Duty like it's their job. The Harry Potter movie games weren't made to appeal to gamers with a specific preference, or even for gamers. It was being made for Harry Potter fans who also played video games. As such, each decision made about how to design the games should have been made with the intention primarily of enhancing the experience for Harry Potter fans. Like, what kind of approach to dueling would give the most satisfaction to a Harry Potter fan? The answer is something intuitive, where it feels like you're waving the wand and actually casting the spells in a deliberate, meaningful way. If this formula had been followed by EA with every facet of the games, there's no doubt in my mind they would have been better in every respect. Thank you all so much for watching, I really appreciate it. There's a bunch of material I excised from this video because it really didn't fit into the semi-essay format I used to structure it. So if you're interested in seeing a supplemental video with that stuff in it, please do let me know. Also, be sure to check me out on Tumblr, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. Thanks, guys!